What's up, guys? We're going to give everybody a few minutes to join and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get started here. Okay, so taking a look at the overall markets here. If you have charting requests that you'd like me to go over, just send those in the chat and we can go over those. Any charts you want me to look at, stocks, anything. But okay, so first things first, let's take a look at the overall market here. And so as you can see, we're very overextended. Something that we pretty much talk about every week is if you look at kind of the chart pattern that typically takes place, we'll have a move from 2 ATR back to the mean, 2 ATR back to the mean, 2 ATR, trade alongside it, back to the mean, 2 ATR back to the mean, and then 2 ATR, and we just kept pushing. So we definitely don't want to jump in front of this market and try and short it, but at the same time, we don't want to hop in and just get long here, right? I think if we look at the futures, might be pulling back a little bit. Yeah, just slightly pulling back on the futures. So with where we're at right now, I don't see a valid reason to get heavily long or a valid reason to get heavily short. So it's kind of a sit and wait and see what happens. But more than likely, I think we will start to get a reversion closer to this cloud area, which is 1 ATR, somewhere back in this area or back to the 21 EMA here. I think it might take some time. It could just be certainly just be a drop, or it could be something more along the lines of we just consolidate sideways until moving averages catch up, and then we can continue our move up. But I do think that we are going to have a continuation upside, and we are going to move up towards the 52-week high, which is this orange line for the S&P. And then I also think from there, we're probably going to move to all-time highs. And I think that will happen sometime early next year. So, but right now, as for the shorter term, I think what more than likely is going to happen is we've kind of had this consolidated push up, but I think we'll probably start to trade sideways at some point, or we may just drop down back to the 21 EMA and retrace there. And then we'll kind of see what happens from there. But you can kind of see there's a consistent pattern of that mean to 2 ATR that we talk about. But also on top of that, it's usually when we get to the mean, we get a squeeze like here, and then we push away from the mean out to that 2 ATR, then back, get a squeeze, push the high ATR, and then come back, get another squeeze, and then push down to 2 ATR, come back, form a squeeze, back to 2 ATR, and then so on and so forth. It kind of just happens over and over and over again. So we've got a lot of good news, and probably one of the biggest drivers of this is bonds. So if you take a look at bonds, we can see that the market is kind of trying to reverse here. You can see we had a little bit of an inverse head and shoulders. So this is kind of inverse to interest rates. So if we see this move higher, typically this is a good sign for the stock market. And it looks like bonds on Friday sold off a bit. And I think that might trigger a little bit of selling in the S&P 500 and QQQ. And obviously QQQ was weaker on the day on Friday, as well as QQQ was weaker on the day, but so that's just typically because of tech, and these big key names are kind of had a big run, like Microsoft, names like that, where we kind of need a pullback, and it was getting dragged down by Nvidia. As you can see, we're almost back at that daily 21, and then we can kind of watch from there to see. I'd really like to see a squeeze form here on the daily time frame for Nvidia, and we've got one on the 4-hour already. I'm kind of looking for one on the daily time frame to ultimately take this weekly squeeze and fire that off back into all-time highs. So, but first kind of names that are starting to show weakness is Nvidia here. And they're probably going to start consolidating around this 21 EMA on the daily time frame. And then going back to kind of the overall markets, for bonds, they're kind of pulling back. They'll probably make a move back to this 21 EMA on the daily, and I kind of expect this to just continue somewhat of an uptrend. As you can see, we've had some seller exhaustion, so let's see if we can get back above this weekly 21 EMA. That'd be a really good sign for the overall markets, or the overall bonds and interest rates, for them to continue moving lower, but this chart is inverse, so this moving higher. And that will be helpful for the markets. And then for dollar, you can see we had a weekly squeeze, and we talked about this a lot, and this is what helped drive the markets higher. And this was kind of my one of the big reasons I thought we would move higher in the markets. And now you can see we've got this. We had a move below the 21 EMA, kind of a change of structure. We had a squeeze that fired off to the downside, and now we are hanging out down here, kind of within this large consolidation we had before. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a bounce. I just think that, like, between, if you look at SPY's chart, QQQ, the dollar, and not as much the bonds, but still, they all need a reversion back to that daily 21 EMA. So, or somewhere along the lines of there. It may not be a full reversion to the dot, but I'm kind of expecting that to happen here in the near future. And similar story for the VIX. I think a pop back up to around that $15 range is probably somewhat likely. So that's kind of my view on the overall markets. Short term, bearish. I don't know. I won't play it aggressively at all, but I am looking for some sort of reversion. And sometimes that may just mean, if it doesn't get to the 21, maybe it'll just pull back to this 8 EMA, consolidate for a bit, and then have a move up. So that's that. And then as for some names that I'm kind of watching into this week, I've got some names that I'm looking long, a few names I'm looking to get short. The two sectors that I'm really paying attention to here are, let's see, XLE. So we played this one last week, caught a really nice move in WMB. We entered right around where this actual arrow is. And then we got up to 100% profit, trimmed some. And then now we're going to see how far this can run. We got a 52-week high that we just posted on Friday. Then we also got a gaps to fill up here. As you can see, right around this area, we've got a gap to fill. So I wouldn't be surprised to have this one go see the gap fill. Now, what's a little more tricky about this is you can see a huge difference between these two charts. So this is an energy name reaching 52-week highs, and we have XLE, which is trading decently close to its 52-week lows, maybe 15% or so. And then about 10%, we're trading right in the middle of the range for this year. So I have this is going to be my main sector to watch going into this week, because I think this is setting up to have a move soon. So, and it will kind of correspond with what CL, so oil, does. It's a little more difficult trade because there are a few names that look good in terms of going long, like MPC. You look at the weekly time frame. This name creating a bull flag right near 52-week highs looks good. And then you have names like, and also on top of that, you have names like WMB, which I just showed you, PSX, which looks clean as well. But then you have names like Exxon, where it's just clear downtrend, trading below 200 and just doesn't look that great. And then you also have like CVX, which these are the two biggest names in this sector, right? So it's like, it's a little more difficult of a trade, but I think that we could see if XLE can reclaim this 200 EMA, which we've got a lot of resistance right here. If we can get above kind of this area right here for XLC or XLE, this would give a lot of upside room for the energy sector. We can look at the monthly chart. Monthly chart looks clean. Nothing wrong with it. It's great a monthly squeeze. Be interesting because if we break this 52-week high, which is this orange line here, we'll reach that all-time high, which seems pretty likely if that ends up happening. So there's a couple of different ways to play this. The overall sector isn't very clear because we have a lot of names right near 52-week lows. We have a lot of names right near 52-week highs. But I do think that this line in the sand is the 200 EMA. So keep a close eye on XLE and whether it gets back above this 200 EMA or not. If it doesn't, then we'll look for like a short position. And I'm watching Oxy. We've got a lot of different time frames that looks pretty good on this name for shorts. You can see the 3-day, the 2-day, the 4-day, the daily, all the way down to the 4-hour. They all look great for a short and Oxy. So I may look to pick this one up tomorrow. And kind of a hedge would be my runners that I have in WMB. So that's what I'm watching here. But the key point to take away is you want to see if we can get back above this resistance or not. If we reject, then we'll head lower. If not, we will kind of see a nice run, and then our runners in WMB will continue to run for a nice continuation. And then next sector that I'm kind of keeping an eye on here is basically Bitcoin miners. You can see we had a nice push on these last week, names like, and I think we still got room to go. So we have a daily squeeze, has yet to fire off. We're back above the 21 on the daily time or weekly time frame. We go look at names like Riot. Looks clean. Had a nice hold above, pretty much looked exactly the same as the overall index, right? Or sector. And then we also have another name, Mara, that these are all seeing pretty nice moves. I would lean towards Riot just because you can see the relationship to the 200 EMA, how we just broke out of that the other day. If we had any sort of pullback, we'd probably pull back below that 200 EMA, which is key resistance. But with Riot, this name is holding up pretty well and has already came above it, retested it, and held it, and had a nice move, almost a 2 ATR here. Okay, so That's another sector that I'll be keeping an eye on. If I can get a pullback here, I'd like to enter calls. I maybe just play this ETF, buy the stock, or I'll look to this one's kind of gone. There's nothing really to do with coin here. It already took off. But if you can get a pullback to that daily 21, I think you're in good shape to play this weekly time frame squeeze, and which we had and has already taken up to from about 85 bucks. We're now at 115. So that was a really nice move on that. So I'll be keeping an eye on Bitcoin stocks here, the miners, a few other names that I'm watching. GD, General Dynamics. Let's see. So this one, you can see this is kind of a gap and go for earnings. We had a move upside. We gapped up after earnings, and now we're trading sideways and kind of have had this consolidation. It looks like we're getting ready to go take out that 52-week high. So I do like this one. If I can get a pullback to somewhere around that 245 area, I would really like to get long GD or General Dynamics and look for a move back to that 52-week high, which ultimately is a all-time high. So I really do like that for upside in the coming weeks. If we can get a pullback maybe into tomorrow, I'd look to take this name, or I'll play a lower time frame squeeze like this 2 hour here and take an entry there and look for a move up. First target would be 250 after a pullback, and then after that, look for that 256 area. So we already kind of talked about MPC. We talked about PSX, WMB. Those are all energy names. So another name that I'm watching is TJX, which is what is this? TJ Maxx. I like this name because if you look at the weekly time frame, we've got a clean squeeze. We're trading upside. We're right near 52-week highs. Clear uptrend. And we've also seen some good strength in names like retail names like Foot Locker. You can see we had a nice move upside on Foot Locker last week. I talked about that in my watch list class last week and turned out to go pretty well. JWN also looks like it's setting up pretty nicely. And Kohl's, all these names are kind of setting up for an upside move. I don't know what Macy's looks like. Yeah, Macy's has had a nice move after earnings. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially with it being kind of the Christmas season. People typically like to trade these names going into Christmas, and I usually like to go towards that. So I usually like to make a trade in retail during the Christmas season because typically it tends to do pretty well. So this seems pretty like a pretty easy trade. We just need momentum to shift. We can get that on the lower time frames. We could easily see a gap fill up to that $93, but then I'd be targeting that 52-week high, which is also an all-time high on TJX. LNG, I'm gonna move this one up here because this one is also an energy name that looks great, had a nice upside move. I decided to play WMB instead of LNG. Probably should have played them both, hindsight 2020, but energy continues to be one of the main ones I'm watching. X, this is kind of industrial sector. And this kind of correlates also with the precious metals type idea. So if we look at kind of XME, not necessarily this chart, but you can see here, like gold, GC, we go look at gold futures. This looks great in terms of upside. I think that we could see a nice run in gold here pretty soon. I actually did trade this on my own on Friday, and I do like this for an upside move back into that 52-week high, which, if I'm not mistaken, would be all-time highs. So I do think gold can make a new all-time high here in the next few months, probably early 2024. We have a squeeze. It looks clean. Look at the 4-day. It's already firing. We go to the 3-day. No squeeze there. 2-day, nothing, but we've got a daily squeeze here. We've got a 4-hour squeeze here. So I think gold could make a really nice move to the upside here in the coming weeks. And I think that could ultimately trigger us for a nice move upside in the coming months. So with gold, I think the precious metals space can be a good place to kind of bet to the upside. And X is a good way to do that because we just made a 52-week high. We're right near those, right near this key pivot point here. I think it's got a pretty good chance of heading back to $40. You can see we've got a daily squeeze. We traded sideways rather than pulling back. We traded sideways and waited for the EMAs to catch up to it. We've got a 4-hour squeeze that looks clean as well. I think we've got a 2-hour that looks great too. And a 2-day, we've got a few things working for it. So I do like this name to the upside as well. Another one, Amazon, I'm keeping on my watch list. I see if I've got an alert here to buy a pullback to that 145 area, and then just to take it back up to 52-week highs. Nothing crazy, but I think this one can make new all-time highs pretty soon here. It may take a while, but I do like the market's upside, so I do think Amazon will do good as well. And if we look at this weekly time frame, I've pointed this out before. We've got a weekly squeeze on top of the fact that we have this inverse head and shoulders forming here. So that's kind of my main watch list. I've got a few names to look to go short, and names being like Bath and Body Works, Oxy we talked about. GME looks pretty good for a short. I hate to short this name, but I think it could have some downside. I think it could go test that 52-week low. And then I've got a couple energy names that I have on my watch list for a short as well. So that's kind of my watch list going into this week. If you guys have tickers that you want me to check out, I can do that. We've got some time, and then we can kind of go from there. Let's see. Hi, Brad. QQQ when we had. I mean, we need to check. So I think you're asking for support and resistance. How far back do we need to check for QQQ? So I don't like for actually drawing support and resistance. I don't do that too much anymore. I used to be a big advocate of it. I don't do it as much. I more importantly look at price points or really trends. So you can kind of see here we're in a pretty clear uptrend. We were in a downtrend and we have shifted to now an uptrend. An easy way to do that is the EMAs. And so for the signals chat, I created an indicator that tells us if we're in an uptrend or a downtrend by either a green showing stacked EMAs, which means we're in an uptrend, or for example, like this here, this red means we are in a downtrend. So that's free for anybody in the signals chat that's signed up, so they can get that. Just let me know if you don't have it and I'll point you in the right direction. But as for support and resistance, I don't do too much of that besides the basics of looking at, okay, like a 52-week high, or looking at like here, you can see here was from this point on, we had a huge move down. So next time we get there, it's probably going to act as price resistance. And then, and you can see how it acted as resistance there. And then same thing here. We had this key point here. And then once we broke down, that was a rejection point. You can kind of see how we consolidated there for a minute and then broke above it and kept going. So that's as far as I go with support and resistance. And then just looking at key psychological levels like 450, 460, 430, 400, things like that. Riot Mark calls have been on fire. Yep. I think there's still still going to move in it. So we can definitely probably play that in the future. X SOXL. So this one, okay. So this is the semiconductor ETF or a semiconductor ETF. So I would kind of point you towards maybe trading SMH just because the options will be more liquid. This is kind of the main sector that people or ticker for this sector that people will look at is SMH. So I'd kind of lean towards this one. As for semiconductors, a lot of them are setting up in a squeeze on the 4-hour time frame, and names like Nvidia, AMD, MU. So I do think there's a move coming in semiconductors. So I'm going to be paying attention to that space as well. But right now, probably the easiest thing to think is that we're probably going to get a reversion back to the mean. So, and if not, we may just trade sideways in some shape or form. So whether that be a direct consolidation sideways before having a move higher, or we may have a sideways, like a sideways to down consolidation down to the 21 EMA and then move higher. But I'm fully expecting this to continue to move higher. It's just a matter of there's not really a setup here. So you can see how we're losing momentum here. So here and here, we've started to lose momentum. So I'm kind of expecting us to continue that and either trade sideways or pull back to the 21 EMA and then kind of look for the next squeeze to set up and then play it that way. So like, for example, here, you can see we had a move down, we pulled back, and then once we had a squeeze form, we kind of shot back down. So I'm looking for that same thing, either a pullback or something like that. Is there any other tickers you guys have that you want me to check out? Other things you want me to go over? Or did I cover everything you guys are looking at? All right. Well, okay, cool. All right, you guys don't have anything else? Well, we're still doing. Are you an FL already? No, I'm not an FL right now. I'm not trading that one right now. I decided to hold off on that one, which wasn't the right idea, but Tesla, this one, I don't have really an opinion on it right now, just because chart's messy. I think we have a 2-hour squeeze, so I think this will kind of dictate the next movement of this one, but I don't really like the way it's trading. It's just a sloppy setup, so I don't, and you can kind of see here, we've got a high and then we've got a lower high. So I don't love that. So right here, I'm kind of just sitting and waiting. There's nothing really to play on this one here. Apple. Same thing. This is going to do whatever the market ends up doing. So if we get a pullback to that 21 EMA, I think it'll be an easy buy the dip for this weekly squeeze, and we can play that to the upside. But as for now, it's the same as kind of the rest of the market. I kind of need to see a pullback to that 21 and or just a chop sideways and let the EMAs catch up, and at least a pullback to that 8 EMA here, which it kind of already has. So we'll see if it ends up holding here or not. But besides that, kind of the rest of the market, I want to see the same thing, some sort of pullback, but definitely a buy the dip on really anything I'm looking at here. Besides these names that I'm looking to get short, I think that all these like these key names, they call it the Magnificent Seven, Apple, Microsoft, Google, those names. I think that Nvidia, I think they're all going to be a kind of a buy the dip situation, unless for some reason the market just ends up falling apart. GoPro looks good on the daily time frame. I don't know. I don't like to trade stocks that are this cheap. I don't I just don't typically like to trade stocks that are this cheap, but if anything, I'd probably guess it'd be a short just because and we got bought up off this, but I would say if anything, I'd probably short this, but I wouldn't play it personally. Um, just you can see kind of the trend that it's been on recently. I mean, we've gone down from $14 all the way down to 350. So I would kind of expect this thing to just continue going lower. Um, so yeah, I would wait for it to momentum to kind of shift on the lower time frames like the daily, because it's got bought up pretty quickly. But as you can see, like it got bought up here and then just sold off right after. Got bought up here, sold off right after. Got bought up here, sold off right after. So I'm kind of expecting the same thing. And this really doesn't look any different than this or this. So I would kind of expect it to sell off again. All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming. As you may know, we're running $5 for the entire month sale. So that ends tomorrow. The code is Black Friday if you want to sign up for it. This is the best deal we've ever ran for our signals, our premium classes, as well as we've got tons and tons of recorded classes already in the archive and the signals chat. So you get alerts from me, alerts from Dark Knight, and extra classes, extra educational content, economic calendar, all that good stuff. And just a bunch of stuff to keep you updated, as well as kind of give you our insights on a day-to-day basis and kind of walk you through what we see every single day and what we're looking at. And like I said, this is the biggest sale we've done ever, and it's $5 for the entire month. So if you want to take advantage of that, make sure to go do that. And I will see you guys for the markets tomorrow.